Okay, that's better. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to our town hall. This came from an idea. First of all, my name is Pam Luckett, and I'm chair of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee. Thank you so much. And this came from an idea from my fellow chair, McNeil Brown, who is somewhere right here from Howard County, to do this together and to invite our elected officials and have them here, because at this time that is so much trepidation, to be able to see them, to hear from them is very important to everyone. So we kind of work together, and I want to thank everybody on the two central committees who helped to pull this together, the staff here at the Silver Spring Civic Center, our Montgomery County Police Department who is here supporting us. So just so you know, we have that in case you feel tempted to get out of line. We do have security here. And so we're gonna just really go right into program. You have my vice chair here. He is going to just take a few moments in a second to introduce elected officials. But to give you kind of an idea of what we're going to do tonight, our elected officials will come up. They will give some opening remarks, and then we will do a Q&A period after that. And we have, for those of you who registered, you know that we have you had the opportunity to send in a question. So we're going to alternate between the questions that were sent in and the Q&A that's in the audience. We have people who are going to be walking up and down the aisle with mics, and when you raise your hand, they're going to, in their section, they'll come over to you and they will hold the mic in their hand. It will never leave their hand and go into your hand. They will hold the mic in their hand, and you will give your question, and then we will rotate through with our elected officials to give the answer. And we are looking forward to a good time tonight in terms of information. We do have for Senator Van Hollen and Senator Alsobrooks have to leave at 8 o'clock. So I'd ask you also, when you do get the mic, that you have one question, not a world history, one question, so that not only it can be answered, but that we have time for as many people that are here to be able to answer questions as well. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair Marco Vera-Oven for introductions, and then we will get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everybody. I will be brief because I know I'm the only thing standing in your way from these amazing individuals, and we want to get to a lot of questions. Thank you again, everybody, for coming to this very important discussion. Quickly, I'll just acknowledge some of the elected officials that are here. My name is Marco Vera-Oven. I'm proud to serve as the Vice Chair of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee. I'll start with our County Council. We have Councilmember Gabe Albernios and Councilmember Kristen Mink here. Thank you both for being here. From our State House, we have State Delegate Jared Solomon. Thanks for being here. If I could have my fellow MCDCC members please stand or wave your hand just to be acknowledged. Thank you all for being here. And finally, the Howard County Democratic Central Committee, if you could please stand or wave your hand, all the members. Thank you for your support and for being here. All right, and then I'm just going to get here, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Senator Chris Van Hollen, Senator Angela Alsobrooks, and Representative Jamie Raskin.
Well, let's give it up for the Montgomery County and Howard County Democratic Central Committees together. And I want to start by thanking all of you as American patriots for being here tonight, because all of us recognize that we face a clear and present danger in our country right now. A clear and present danger to our Constitution, to the rule of law, and to other things that we hold dear in this country. And we stand together in saying that we will fight this illegal Elon Musk takeover of the federal government, And we will fight them in the courts, and we will fight them in Congress, and we have to fight them in every neighborhood around the country. Mobilizing public opinion is going to be essential to our success. So thank all of you for being here. Now, I'm looking forward to the questions. I know this is a town hall and not a rally, but I just do want to ask all of you this question. Are we going to make sure that we shut down the illegal Elon Musk operation? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Because what we are witnessing is the most corrupt bargain in American history. Elon Musk contributed over $280 million to elect Donald Trump, and Donald Trump turned the keys to the federal government over to Elon Musk. And what they are doing is going through federal agencies, breaking laws, taking sensitive information, and doing all this to both make government work for the already powerful and to claim cuts that they then want to use for tax cuts for the very wealthy. And that's why we have to shut down this illegal operation. It's also based on the big, because what Donald Trump said on the campaign trail was he was going to lower prices for the American people and look out for working people. He has done none of that in the last 30 days. What he has done is work to implement Project 2025. Now, when he was asked on the campaign trail about Project 2025, he said he knew nothing about it. He said, I don't know who those people are. He said that because he knew how unpopular it was. And then he went right around and worked to install Russ Vought, who was the author of Project 2025, as the head of OMB, which all of you know is like the command and control center for the United States budget. And they are wreaking havoc and they are breaking laws. We're looking forward to your questions because clearly the question is, what are we all doing about it? And I do want to say that when you have serial law breaking going on, the first line of defense are the courts. And this is why you've seen so many lawsuits that have been filed. Thank goodness for the judges who have already issued temporary restraining orders against this illegal activity. And I want to tell you that your Maryland delegation, Senator Alsobrooks, Congressman Raskin, myself and others, have been at the tip of the spear in this effort, both in the courts, Congress, and mobilizing public opinion. In the courts, we have been fielding constituent calls and getting information that can be very important in these lawsuits for standing. I have personally talked to whistleblowers who need protection, but who can testify to the kind of law breaking that's going on. And we can talk about some of these cases that are moving their way through the courts. But here's what I want to say at the outset. It is plain illegal to fire federal employees unless there's a performance reason for misconduct. That is true also of so-called probationary employees. There are due process rights that they are illegally trampling over. And so we are going to work as fast as we can with the courts to stop that illegal action. We can also talk about what we're doing in the Congress, the House and the Senate. I can tell you in the Senate, we are using all of our procedural tools. I know there have been questions about that, to drag out debate as long as possible. Senator Alsobrooks and I have been on the floor of the Senate, using up the time to try to stop RFK Jr., who's a threat to our country, to try and stop Russ Vought, to try and stop Texas. But when the full time runs out of 30 hours, the fact of the matter is we don't have the majority, and we need the majority, which brings me to my last point here, mobilizing public opinion. I think people around the country, including those who voted for Donald Trump, are realizing that they've been betrayed, that he is not working to bring down prices, that he is in fact taking these other actions that are enabling very powerful people like Elon Musk. And we need to continue to get the word out there. All of you have a role in that as well. Calling people around the country you know, and of course, laying the groundwork for the midterm elections when we take back the majority in the House of Representatives and we win more seats in the United States. But this has got to be an all hands on deck, coming from every angle approach. in the courts, in the Congress, and mobilizing public opinion. I want to thank all of you because you are incredible patriots and you recognize what is at stake. And I want you to know that the three of us and your Maryland delegation have been the tip of the spear in trying to fight on all of these fronts: courts, Congress, and mobilizing public opinion. Thank you all. Now I'm going to turn it over to my great new partner, Senator Angela Alsobrooks.
First of all, I am on the best team. I have to tell you, Senator Van Hollen, who is now our senior senator. We are also proud of Congressman Jamie Raskin, who we loving but the best part of our team would be all of you. And so I am so grateful that you have come out tonight to have this discussion with us. I'm so proud of everything you all are doing on the ground in a really unprecedented time. The time where we are led now by this callous leader who's a ruthless man, who doesn't care about the truth, and who I think is doing something that is the most insidious thing you could do, and it is to have an attempt to demoralize the American people. I think the first thing that he has done is to hope to incite so much fear and anxiety that we won't notice what the true objective is of his motives, of his actions. And so what did he do first? He didn't move to improve our lives, which is what he promised he would do. He instead decided that he would really begin this witch hunt. And it really is a witch hunt that is happening regarding our federal workers. These civil servants who've served, so many of them, our country for decades. I have met them. Some are here tonight who've served for decades. The people who've served through many administrations, both Republican and Democratic. I've met people, a woman who said she worked for the Department of Agriculture for 37 years. And so she's seen presidents come and go, but she's not there for Republicans or Democrats. She's there for the American. Now on federal workers, it's not just an attack on our federal workers, it's an attack on the people that they serve. And this is what we understand. And so it is so important, I think, chief among all of the things that we will tell you tonight is that we not become discouraged or weary. Because I think that really is a part of the strategy, is to wear down people so much so that we will ignore the fact that this man has turned over the keys to these billionaires. We think about Bezos, we think about Zuckerberg. The three of them together have net worth of over $1 trillion. And this is what this is really all about, is the billionaires are getting what they paid for. It was so clear to all of us what the objective was of this administration. We could see it for ourselves on Inauguration Day. When you looked up on the stage, who did you see? You saw the Billionaire Club sitting right up on the stage. And so this attack to quickly violate the rights of people, and then to convince them that somehow they are incompetent. There are notices that went out saying you are being fired because you are unqualified. Well, let me tell you something. I know who's unqualified because we've been sitting in these nomination hearings with the most unqualified people we can imagine. I sat in the hearing with RFK Jr., and I can tell you he is completely unqualified to serve as Secretary of Health and Human Services, a man who could barely tell us the difference between Medicare and Medicaid, didn't know the difference between the two. And so when we think about incompetent, you think about the kids call it the Jedi mind trick that is happening now to convince us that the men and women who show up with medical research, who make sure that our water is clean, who make sure that our food won't poison us, that somehow these people are the people that we should replace, again, so that the billionaires can get richer. So the thing is really important. We're going to answer questions here tonight. As Senator Van Hollen said it really well when he says that we're going to attack on every level, legislatively, through the legal system. We also are going to continue to mobilize. We've been out with the employees at the Social Security Administration, which, by the way, when you look at the president today endorsed a budget that had in it cuts of $880 billion to Medicaid. We know very clearly what he is going to do. We know what this is all about. But making sure that we continue to stay vigilant. And I want to say one other thing. I've heard a lot of calls, and it's right that we should also say where are the Democrats in this moment. I think it is especially important to hear that the people we ought to also be calling on right now, the ones who, in my opinion, have been so cowardly, are these Republicans. The ones who watch the leader of their party attempt to tear down our country, not only domestically, but internationally, and they have remained silent. They have been complicit in every way in terms of what is happening. And so I have met with many of my constituents. I have come to the office there, and we welcome and we want people to come. And I want to make sure that we are also flooding the offices, calling into the Republicans' offices, and again, what they intend to do to hold their colleague, hold this president accountable. They have done nothing, and they don't intend to. And I think it's really important to have that message be told as well. So I'm going to hand over the microphone now to Congressman Jamie Raskin. I'd be happy to answer all of your questions. But thank you so much for being here. We are so ready to fight. And let me tell you, we are not tired, and we will not tire. We will not tire. We're going to fight for as long as it takes to ensure that we protect our country, that we protect democracy, and that we prevent the steal that is happening. This is just an effort to raise the government. We're going to make sure that it does not.
Hello, Montgomery County and Howard County Democrats. Thank you, Sam Luckett. Thank you, Marco Rivera-Oven. I thank you, the whole MCTCC who organized this to get here tonight. Thank you all for being here. I'm in such an angry state of mind, my friends. Such an angry state of mind. I don't know how many of you came down with us today to HHS. We're down there with the people from FDA, the people from NIH. Is that you? So thank you for everything you're doing, Jill Orban Fest. There's a real organizer back there. We went down to protest the assault on NIH, the assault on FDA. I came up with a new chant. You know, I was the chant master last time. We ran around the track. It was very simple. It was, hey, hey, RFK, hands off the FDA. But I came back madder than I was when I went down there because I must have talked to a dozen people who told me that they've been sacked today. They've been fired because they're probationary employees. And for the vast majority of them, you know why they're on probation? Because they got a promotion. They did so well in their job, they got a promotion to a new job, but that put them in a probationary status. And then Elon Musk pounced on that, and they got sacked because of it. And then, you know, on the way back, I heard on the news that Donald Trump was calling President Zelensky a dictator and a warmonger. Okay? This is after J.D. Vance goes over there, and they're having their security conference in Munich about Putin's filthy fascist invasion of Ukraine and China's threat to Hong Kong and Taiwan. And J.D. Vance says, the problem is not China, the problem is not Russia, the problem, Democratic allies in Europe, is you, because you're being so mean to the extreme ultra-right neo-fascist parties of Austria and Germany. That's what our vice president just did. Our vice president just did it. And then he met with the Alternative for Deutschland, the AFD, which harbors all the Holocaust revisionists and anti-Semites in Germany, violating a taboo and a tradition and an agreement among the Democratic parties of Germany going back to World War II that they don't meet with the ultra-right parties. So somebody on my staff said, you know, stop talking so much about foreign policy. Just talk about what's going on with us. It's the same thing. It's an attack on democracy and freedom and progress all over the world. So I was out there with your great senators when we started this at AID. What was that, 3 Mondays ago, Chris? I can't remember. 3 Mondays ago. And we're battling them in the courts, and we're battling them in Congress, and we're battling them in the streets. But I said that day what I thought would become the motto of this period: a rally a day keeps the fascists away. Okay? We need to keep people's spirits up. We need to be expressing solidarity with anybody who's under attack, whether it's an FDA or NOAA or NIH or the Department of Education, or people in the LGBTQIA plus community, the transgender kids, whether it's the immigrants and the refugees, because they shut down America. They closed the door to refugees. That is, people who have a well-documented fear of violent repression if they're sent back to wherever they're going because of political or religious or other reasons. And then we had to write these guys, erstwhile colleague, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Why? Because he cut off the stipend for people who've already been admitted to refugees in America, a 3-month stipend to find housing and to have food for their children, because he said, we're cutting off foreign aid. It's not foreign aid if it's going to people in the United States of America. If it's going to people who are... So I am, I feel the way I think everybody in this room feels. It is such an outrage, such a disgrace, what's going on. And I also don't buy the lie that this is what the American people voted for. They campaigned on the price of eggs. They campaigned on inflation. Eggs have never been more expensive. And you know what else has never been more expensive? Eggs Benedict. Because that's what Donald Trump has brought us. Nothing but a betrayal of the values, the principles of this country. That's never been more expensive to experience the kind of betrayal that we're seeing in America right now. And I'll close on a thought about corruption and lawlessness, because they're out there. If you watch Fox News, you would think this is the most popular administration in American history. Why? Because they're fighting corruption. They're fighting waste, fraud, and abuse. And what's the proof of it? Well, there's no proof of it. They're just telling them that Elon Musk is going all over the place and shutting down all these agencies and departments. Elon Musk and his band of misfit, post-pubescent betrayers of America and computer hackers are not opponents of corruption. They are agents of corruption. They are instruments of corruption wherever they go. Why do you think they fired 17 inspectors general as their first act in office? The inspector generals, those are the real corruption fighters in America. The IGs that they fired had saved us $91 billion in the last fiscal year. And they know how to do it. They go in with forensic accountants. They go in and they study the books. We probably have people in this room whose job it is to ferret out waste, fraud, and abuse. Elon Musk isn't ferreting out waste, fraud, and abuse. He didn't show up with forensic accountants and people who studied budgets. He showed up with computer hackers to go and steal the private data of the American people. That's what they're doing at the Treasury Department. That's what they're doing at NIH. That's what they're doing at OMB. Then they shut down the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. They said, we're not going to have prosecutions there. Then they made a deal with the mayor of New York, who's been indicted on bribery and conspiracy and other corruption charges. And then when the very conservative lawyers, the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York and the Department of Justice wouldn't go along with it, they were forced out of the Department of Justice. The U.S. Attorney, who was a Scalia clerk on the Supreme Court, said she would not put up with this kind of corruption and trampling of the basic values of the Department of Justice and the Constitution. So don't let anybody tell you that they are somehow corruption fighters. Their whole administration is organized around corruption and turning the government into a money-making enterprise for Donald Trump and Elon Musk and all of the billionaires in their cabinet. So we're gonna fight it in the courts, we're gonna fight it in Congress, we're gonna fight it in the streets. And my friends, just like we got through it last time, we're gonna get through it this time, and we're gonna be stronger than we ever were before.
So very much. We are so fortunate to be here in Maryland and Montgomery County to have these wonderful elected officials. We're going to jump right into our questions, and we're going to do the audience questions first. But I do want to take just a moment to recognize and acknowledge Councilmember Andrew Friedson, who joined us. And initially we met Cecily Thorne, who is Chief of Staff here representing Council President Kate Stewart. Okay, so here's what's gonna happen. These are our microphones. They have their areas, they're covered. So you're gonna raise your hand. They're gonna come up to you holding the mic in their hand so very tightly. And you're gonna ask your question, and we're gonna start the tape. Hello?
Thank you for being here. Senator Van Hollen, my name is Kyle Bacon. You may remember me back last year. I gave you a brief tour of the imaging facilities of the National Archives of College Park. My question has to do with our agency. We currently don't have an archivist of the United States. We also do not have a deputy archivist of the United States. He was unceremoniously forced out after 32 years of service. The U.S. Code states that the Archivist of the United States is meant to be a nonpartisan position. The names that have been floated for the archivist are a series of right-wing media personalities. What are you as the United States Center going to do to prevent this from happening, or to hold the GOP accountable when they ultimately grant through a right-wing candidate?
Well, thank you for spotlighting that issue, the archivists, and thank you for your service there, the archivists. That's just one of many federal agencies where we've seen Donald Trump organized because of revenge, right? He's still mad that the archivists did their jobs and made sure that they, determined that the records had been taken by Donald Trump to Mar-a-Lago, classified information, and of course now what Donald Trump is doing, as he's doing across the government, is seeking revenge. So I can assure you that we will use all of our powers to defeat any person, as you described, an unqualified person. I mean, all of these nominees, all of them have either been unqualified entirely, or if they're qualified on paper, in my view, they're disqualified because we know once they get into the administration, they don't obey the law and they simply follow illegal orders from people like Elon Musk. So we are going to make sure we muster every vote we can to oppose it. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, we need, in a Senate of 53 to 47, we can exhaust all our procedural options. We still need some Republicans to come along. And so that is why it's so important to fight, not just to fight in the courts and in Congress, but to mobilize public opinion around the country. We got close on Hexa, but in the end, the arm twisting on the other side was just too much. And I do want to just say what my colleague Senator Alsobrooks said and Congressman Raskin. We are witnessing the most coward, the cowardice among Republicans is stunning, stunning. These people will tell you privately that they know these individuals are disqualified. And yet, when they see a tweet from Elon Musk or a phone call from Donald Trump, they will betray their own conscience and their constituents' best interests and support these nominees. I can tell you, I was at the Munich conference over the weekend, 48 hours, and met with Zelensky. And Republicans there, along with Democrats, sat across from Zelensky and assured him, this group, that the United States would stand with the people of Ukraine and stand up for democracy and freedom. And we come home, And Donald Trump had already started to throw Ukraine under the bus, but today, as Raskin said yesterday, he said that it was Zelensky who was the dictator, not Putin, and has totally thrown the Ukrainian people under the bus. And I'm mentioning this because it all is of a cloth where those Republicans who told Zelensky that they were going to stand with the people of Ukraine, I haven't heard them yet speaking out against what Donald Trump said today. So they say one thing behind closed doors, but not in public. So part of the reason to have these important conversations, and we need to have them all over the country, is to expose these lies and people who say one thing behind closed doors and make them come out in public and answer questions like we are. But the bottom line is we will fight these unqualified nominees, but we have to also fight them across the board. Last point I want to make is I do want to thank, many of these firings are illegal. For example, the Inspector Generals, they are challenging that, right? The Office of Special Counsel, which plays a very important role in allowing federal employees to exercise their rights, their due process rights, is also challenged to dismiss this. So we have, and I want to thank every federal employee that has stood up and disobeyed an illegal order, because you have a duty. We will continue to mobilize in the Senate, but we also need to mobilize around the country and take this to the courts.
Hi, Susan Helton, Miss Silver Spring. I just want to emphasize the depravity and the cruelty of the man in the White House. And what you're saying about Zelensky and Ukraine is could be the turning point of our society in 80 years of friendship with Europe. I hope that you're going to do something, and please let us know what we can help. Just a cautionary tale. I got 3 very bizarre phone calls today from Medicare, asking me all sorts of information. They were right within Maryland, appears, and they wanted to know all sorts of stuff. And the only thing I could think of is, how did they get my information? I contacted our wonderful Attorney General, and when asked, I asked them if I could get a number to call back. They said, oh, we don't have time for that. And so finally on the 3rd call, I said, please send me something in mail. But it's happening. I am convinced this is part of someone got my information. So, but please do something about Ukraine, and if there's anything we could do, let us know. Thank you.
Senator Alsobrooks, would you like to comment?
Well, I do have a question. I'd like to know if we're able to copy down the number that called you. Yeah, I'd be interested.
Would you like
those numbers? Yeah, I'm concerned about where this came from.
Carolyn, I'll give you a note with the numbers.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, fine, that's fine. Hi, I'm Lynn Hughes. I'm the executive director of Action News Media, President Brigade. And I'm here because it's not just the federal employees who are having difficulty, those of us who are funded by the federal government. And I know that you're aware, with all the executive orders that have gone out, there's been a lot of freezing of funds for local organizations. I want to give a shout out to the NEA, who made a point in the past 2 weeks to make sure we were paid through our NEA grant. But I want to talk about immigrants and our youth and the youth in this community who are being hit extraordinarily hardly by what's going on with the freezing of funds with USAID. And I know there's only so much you could do, but we've already seen court cases saying that these acts are illegal. We have students right now in this county whose families can't pay their rent, whose jobs, whose businesses have been supported. They have businesses that are actually operating in this county, and they've had to lay off their entire staff because their funds have been frozen and they have no money for salaries. What are we supposed to do? Because every other organization I know, like mine, is at their wit's end. We've exhausted all of our resources.
Congressman Raskin, I'm going to give that to you first, please.
Maybe first of all, thank you for everything the Gandhi Brigade has done for our community. There are court orders outstanding that would release, I'd have to look specifically at your situation, but that theoretically are releasing funds. Remember, we're talking about money that was already appropriated by Congress in the last Congress, committed and programmed for particular purposes. So we're not even talking about the future. We can fight about that later, but what we're saying is if Congress has appropriated money, an Appropriations Act is a federal law. Like the law, you can't assault federal officers. They must comply with that Appropriations Act. And if you've got a court order saying, see the money through, then see the money through. But we keep getting reports from people saying they're not giving us the money from the fourth quarter of 2024, and they're not giving us the money for January and February of this year. So if that is the case for you or anybody else here, let me know, let the senators know, and we will call and we will use our insistent grown-up voices that money has got to be released, because that is a governmental impairment of contract. It is a breach of contract. And then we can talk about what needs to be done going forward. I mean, the way I'm trying to think of this period is short term, we've got to be in court demanding that people meet their contracts, the government meet their legal obligations. Medium term, we've got to win back the U.S. House of Representatives. We got to cut this reign of terror in half. We can do the Senate, we can do the Senate. I know it's a tough amount, but long term, we need transnational political solidarity and activism with democratic movements, parties, and governments all over the world. And we need to keep democracy moving in America. 2 new states, and I'm not talking about Panama and Greenland, I'm talking about Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico.
Would you like to address that, or should we go to the next? And one other point I'd like to add is to say, it is really a shame. First of all, we have such a constitutional crisis that is occurring right now. We have a president who, I think, as a result of what the Supreme Court did with that immunity decision, has emboldened him to such an extent. I don't know how many of you saw his tweet today saying, "Long live the king." He tweeted today, "Long live the king." He sure did. But he believes he's above the law. He and Musk have challenged the courts, whether or not they even have the right to direct this administration to comply with the law. Now, the thing that they are doing that I think in the long run, before long, they're going to harm themselves, believe this. Because what they're doing, the level of evil is not sustainable. And he's harming the people who voted for him. What he didn't recognize is many of these federal freezes, it's hurting people in red states also. So it's not just here, but we think about USAID and we think about the work they did. Well, they're farmers, and yes, the great work they did. They're farmers in even some of the red parts of the country who are supplying food and other things. And so his constituents, before long, his base, I believe that these cuts will also, and freezes will also affect his base before long. And so we're going to see, I believe, when the American people realize how they have been duped by this administration, I believe the voices will raise. So we're going to continue to do all that we can. And I believe it's only a matter of time before all of this begins to backfire on Elon Musk and his co-president, Trump.
The only thing I would add to what Congressman Raskin, I think, alluded to this, which is when they're violating court order, and 2 courts, one in Rhode Island, one in D.C., have found issued temporary restraining orders against the impoundment of funds, right? Presidents don't get to look at the law as a la carte and say, I like that part and not that part. They have to follow the law. And there are sanctions that judges can levy, ultimately, if people are deliberately ignoring court order. So that would be the next step if we see intentionality. But you should let us know what funds are being held. We have been successful at getting more and more released because the courts did require that they be released. And I will say, you probably already heard a lot of the Power Control Act, but that will be a major issue in some of these big cases because presidents are not kings. They want to be. And Elon Musk, he can play dictator at Tesla, but he doesn't get to be dictator in the United States of America.
I'd rather not give my name to protect the privacy of child intervention. I'm a single mother of three, one of whom is a gender nonconforming teenager whose life was at risk and was saved by full intervention, and now is thriving. I've had to rely on social benefits in the past in order to keep my kids housed and thriving and doing well. I want to thank particularly Congressperson Raskin and Senator Hollen, because I've seen you out there, I've seen you fighting, and I've seen the action you take. Seeing you on Face the Nation suggesting creative solutions such as filing class action lawsuits is inspiring, and it gives me hope when I feel hopeless and terrible all the time. What I really want to know is, why do you seem to be such outliers in the Democratic Party in Congress as a whole? They are my solution, not what I have to do as a citizen, is reach out to my representatives. Well, my representatives are doing the damn thing.
Right.
Why is the rest of the party seemingly, when they do speak, it's in platitudes?
Yep.
Why do they seem paralyzed in fear? Why don't I hear mention of aggressive legislative obstruction? Why don't I hear mention of quorum denial? Why don't I?
Yeah.
And will actually convey the message that they are fighting. I don't feel that. And what can we do to convey to the rest of the Democratic Congress people that we demand action?
Amen.
So, first of all, I want you to know, and I can speak only on behalf of the Senate, and I can tell you in particular, my Democratic colleagues are working really hard, and they do care. We talk almost every day about what more we can do to continue to communicate the rage that we feel, the disappointment that we feel, the anger. And I can assure you that not just myself and Senator Van Hollen, but I can assure you that my colleagues are working every day to make sure that we're continuing to communicate with the public, not only about what action we are taking, we're using every procedural tool we can in the Senate now, and we're working pretty much in unity to block nominations. As you heard, the sad reality is that we are in the minority, but we're extending the time. We held the floor for 30 hours and to be there overnight tomorrow night. Until about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
More of that.
To hold the floor until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. We are each dispersing, we're sharing communications tools. And so we need to do more. I can agree with you that we need to do more, but I don't want you to feel for a moment, because I'm there with them every day, that the people, at least on the Senate side, and I know Congressman Raskin will talk about what you're seeing on the Democratic side, but there are many of us who are out and about. We are going out to the demonstrations. I know that I have been out along with Senator Van Hollen and Congressman Raskin, working with our labor partners who've been out there and communicating as much as we can, but we still do have a long ways to go. But I don't want you to think for a moment that it is because we don't care. That is not the case, most especially in the Senate, and I absolutely do care, and we're going to continue fighting. We're right there with you.
Let me just add one thing to this. We're in historically unprecedented time. I mean, it's very hard to figure out what is going on planet Earth right now. I mean, somebody said to me, "Is this like 1860?" And I said, "Well, actually, it's not like 1860 because Abraham Lincoln won. What if Jefferson Davis had won?" And then we're trying to figure out what to do, and there are means of communication that fascists never had in the 1930s that these people have. And Elon Musk is trying to seize control over the means of communication with Twitter and X, the means of government financial payment by seizing control over computers. He's in the military with the satellite technology. And if you listen to the people in Silicon Valley, they take it for granted. Like, check out the interviews with Curtis Yarvin, he was in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, or Peter Thiel. They take it for granted that they're saying we're living in a post-constitutional era, and they want to move us into a techno-monarchy. And guess who's presenting himself as the king, right? And Donald Trump talking about long live the king. You saw he threw J.D. Vance overboard the other day when they asked him if he was going to be his successor in office. He just said no. But look, Elon Musk, he can't run for president. He was born in South Africa, in apartheid South Africa. He can't run for president, but he thinks he can buy the presidency by giving Donald Trump $370 million and then coming in with Doge and just taking over all the federal departments. Although yesterday they claimed in court in a filing that Elon Musk is not working with Doge, is not the head of Doge. They said he is a presidential advisor. That way he's not going to presumably have to fill out the ethics forms that I was taunting him about a few weeks ago on X. And then he started tweeting back at me. My kids are saying, wait, you want to get in a fight on Twitter with the guy who owns Twitter? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. He must fill out the ethics forms. He is replete with conflicts of interest. He is a billionaire government contractor who gets billions of dollars from the federal taxpayers. Fill out your damn ethics forms like everybody else. And if you've got a conflict of interest, you've got to recuse yourself from it, or you can't take the job. So I don't know exactly what they're saying right now. But so look, this is a tough period, and you're right. Everybody has got to be working on this up to their maximum ability. I'm working 7 days a week on this, okay? But we also have to have a sense of solidarity and compassion with people who are in this struggle, because people are flipping out about what's going on. We know that democracy is riding in the balance every day. So yeah, it's fine to light a fire under your Democratic elected officials. We are the Democracy and Freedom Party. But once everybody gets in it, let's be unified and focused in beating these guys.
I just wanted to comment on the very first part of your question, the story you told, because one of the most despicable characteristics of this president is he picks on people he perceives, the people who are the most vulnerable in our society. So it's our job to stand up hard for those people in the United States of America. That is what he does. I was on the Senate floor today reminding people about how he spoke down and criticized and made fun of people with disabilities. That's what we people do. He is a bully. I also pointed out that he's a weak man because when he runs into another bully, like Vladimir Putin, he backs down. Donald Trump backed down to the bully of Vladimir Putin. So we need to stand up for all of the Americans at this time when they are trying to go out and pick on different people because of race or ethnicity or orientation, whatever it may be. We're all Americans. And I believe that all Americans believe that every American should be treated with dignity, regardless of what differences they make. And we need to stand up for that principle.
So I'll ask a question in a second. One of the concerns I have is that the Trump administration will ignore the Supreme Court. They'll ignore oral court orders. But my question is, there are many different organizations organizing rallies, letter writing, etc. Are they working together? It's essential that the major organizations come together and work out. The party needs to be involved, bring together Indivisible, ACLU, etc. I don't hear that they're working together. Maybe it's being done privately, but somehow we need to know that.
Well, I think we have a lot more work to do where that's concerned. We have met with a lot of those organizations. We've been meeting with them. I know I have. I know Senator Van Hollen and Congressman Raskin, Indivisible. We've met with the legacy organizations who've come to us as well. The Legal Defense Fund and a number of other organizations are coming to us. We have a lot of work to do. We are being out messaged, I think, in a lot of ways. Now, we recognize, as Congressman Raskin indicated, I mean, a lot of these platforms are owned by these billionaires. When we think about the Washington Post, if we're honest about it, we think about Twitter and a lot of the others, and so we are being out communicated. And so our solidarity is going to be really important with the legacy organizations because the strength of this movement is going to be from the people. I think that's essentially what we're going to have to see. And as I've indicated, I think it has to not only come from Democrats, this is going to be successful because I believe that we're going to eventually find some people on the other side who will also find that their lives have been turned upside down by this man. He doesn't care about any of us. That's the truth. He doesn't care if the truth is told about Republicans or Democrats. He doesn't care about any of us. He only cares about his billionaire friends and getting these tax cuts for wealthy people. That's what all of this is really about. So we're going to continue to do work. I think your question is a good one about making sure that we bring the legacy organizations in, that we mobilize people on every level to continue to make sure we're getting the information out, that we're also mobilizing around these lawsuits. And many of the lawsuits are successful so far. So that's very encouraging to us. We've seen a lot of success in the lawsuits. And of course, the public opinion, I think, is also going to be really, really important. We're going to continue mobilizing them, but remember, they own a lot of these platforms, so we have to really be savvy. And that is a lot of what our discussion is about the way that we continue to communicate and speak in plain language. I think we also have to talk to the American people in a way that we have not done a really great job at that, but we're going to be doing more and more to make sure we're communicating in plain language about what's at stake.
I want to just add something about Tony's important point about coalition and alliance. I believe I saw this, unless I had a dream that this happened, but I believe that the AFL-CIO and Change to Win got back together. Is that right? All right, that deserves some applause. Moving in the right direction. Tony, I believe that all of the major groups are coming together and they meet in coalition. I don't know what the name of the coalition is, but certainly the Indivisible People, I think, have been spearheading that, along with a lot of the other, civic society groups that came alive during the last eruption of Trump. I'm sorry, 50-51. But I want to say this because I spent some time today with groups who had money cut off to them, like the Gandhi Brigade. I'm sorry, what's the new name? Action Youth Media. That's a cool name, Action Youth Media. But the religious groups, we need to come together. So Catholic Relief Services has been completely cut off on this freeze against foreign aid. The Lutheran Relief Services, I'm forgetting what their new name is. Everybody's got a new name, but they've got a new name. So we need those groups to come forward and to say that this savage cutoff of foreign aid not only hurts American farmers who got used to get $2 billion a year for farm food that we would send to starving populations in Africa, and it not only hurts thousands of honorable civil service workers in America who devoted their lives in solidarity to people around the world, but it is threatening to starve to death hundreds of thousands or millions of people around the world. And we need the religious groups out front on that. There are enough Christian white nationalist groups who are talking about how important it is to restore prayer in the public schools, which is something our Republican colleagues want to bring up ever since Louisiana. They restored prayer. They voted to prayer in the public schools, and they voted to endorse the 10 Commandments and post the 10 Commandments. My Republican colleagues said they wanted us to vote on the 10 Commandments. I said, gee, well, the 10 Commandments have been doing fine for millennia without a vote by the Freedom Caucus in the House of Representatives. But I said, you know what? If we're going to vote on the 10 Commandments, here's my rule proposal I brought to the Rules Committee. You should have to vote on each commandment separately, okay? Not the omnibus package, and you can't vote for any commandment you've ever violated yourself. Take that, gentlemen. But it's time for the real religious people to stand up and stop this mockery and desecration of everything that people really believe in.
I want to mention one other place where coordination is especially important, and that is in the filing of these lawsuits. Because it's very, very important that these be done in a strategic manner, given the fact that they will ultimately travel to the Supreme Court. And I can say, having spent a lot of time on the phone with Democracy Forward, and thank God that organization was formed in anticipation of having to fight this, and the unions and the attorney generals and others, is that they are coordinating these cases. And there are lots of them filed, as we've all said, and they have different approaches. Don't get down, for example, when one of them does not get a TRO. I want to mention very briefly the decision yesterday where a TRO was denied on the basis of standing to some unions. But here's what the federal judge wrote in that opinion. While standing was not permitted, and that's why it's so important that we gather the stories of people who can demonstrate injury to show standing. But here's what the judge in that case said, even in finding there was no standing. That said, plaintiffs raised a colorable appointments clause claim with serious implications. Musk has not been nominated by the president, nor confirmed by the United States Senate, as constitutionally required for officers who exercise significant authority pursuant to the laws of the United States. They go on to say even defendants, meaning the Trump administration, concede there is no apparent source of legal authority granting DOJ the power to take some of the actions challenged here. So I want to mention this because the court strategy is essential, and coordination there is going to be vital in terms of this. In the meantime, we got to keep fighting in the court and in Congress and doing what we're doing here and mobilizing public support. But this legal strategy, it is very important that it be coordinated, and best I can ascertain, talking to lots of people, is we are moving together with the co-parent plan.
I work for a financial regulator, not a federal employee. I've never been to one of these events before. It's really bleak, guys. I don't know. I have friends that have lost their jobs. I have neighbors that have lost their jobs. What are we supposed to do? Are they going to get their jobs back? Are the agencies going to be put back together? I feel like all I've heard here and also just in the media is, yeah, the courts will figure it out. We have to wait, but I mean, what are we supposed to do in the meantime? Seriously, what are we supposed to do?
So that is a extremely fair and right question. All of us have neighbors. I have a neighbor who just the other day received a notice that she was going to be let go. She's a probationary worker. She came over to our house to let us know, and we were all extremely upset. So the honest answer to your question is, when people get laid off, they should know, number one, we are going to fight to get them fully reinstated with all their protection. And I think we have a very reasonable chance of success in many of these cases, if not all of these cases. That's not a great answer for what to do in the meantime. I get that. And there are resources being put together. If you go to our web pages, we have a list of resources from the state, the county, putting together, and what's available at the federal government. It's not a great answer when you've lost your job. We get that. The best answer is to try to get that job back. And I just want to mention some specifics, because I think specifics are important when it comes, for example, to probationary employees. Probationary, as you all know, doesn't mean you've done it wrong. I think as Congressman Raskin says, I mean, you just got promoted, so you're in a new job. So in order to be fired in the federal government as a probationary employee, it has to be for performance reasons or misconduct. Okay, and those obviously go together. It has to be for performance or other misconduct. In these cases, that was not what they did. I'm sure you've seen the stories of plenty of people who were fired. They put in the letter for performance reasons. They lied. They absolutely lied. These are people who perform very well. In fact, there was a story, I was at the NIH rally today, and there was a woman who was let go as a probationary employee from NIH who had a 25 out of 25 performance score in her last performance rating and had glowing recommendations from those people. That's illegal firing. And so that will go to the courts. It's all tied up in a case with the Office of Special Counsel. They fired the head of the Office of Special Counsel. The head of the Office of Special Counsel is appealing that and has won the appeal at the district court and appellate court. He moved very quickly. And now the administration is appealing to the Supreme Court. I'm going through that case because the Office of Special Counsel is the one that would deal with a lot of the, for example, probationary employees. And so, yes, it is a terrible thing that we cannot get swifter justice here. But I do want people to know we are fighting in every one of these forums to try to make sure that justice is done. And when you've got a moment like we are facing in our country, and it is an existential moment for our democracy, that's why all of us, as Jamie Raskin said, we have to be working 24/7. None of us are sleeping. I'm sure none of you are. And we are angry, and we will do everything we can to try to make sure that this nightmare ends and people are held accountable.
Can I just add one little PS to what Chris just said? The case before the Office of Special Counsel on the class action suit on behalf of probationary employees is before the Office of Special Counsel. The Office of Special Counsel director himself, Hampton Dellinger, was fired unlawfully, and his case is up in the Supreme Court. So even the people we would go to get recourse from have been sacked. There were federal judges, by the way, who got Elon Musk's fork in the road letter. Federal judges, because apparently somehow they got a hold of the computers and they sent the letter to everybody, whether it was the executive branch or the judicial branch. They sent the letter to everybody. And of course, Musk copied that letter verbatim from the letter that he sent to the Twitter employees when he took over that company and is driving it into the ground, just like with Tesla.
Congresspeople and senators, thanks so much for being here tonight. This is greatly appreciated and hugely important. Thank you also for mentioning the U.S. Agency for American. Conversation tonight about what can be done for Montgomery County and Maryland residents that were U.S. direct hires, but for those of us who were contractors, not direct hires, with the USAID, we're already out of the job and have no legal recourse. And there are a lot of federal contractors in this district, in this county, in this state. This can spring at some point. This is the loss of tax revenue. This is also going to be a burden on the unemployment benefits insurance of the state. And so as somebody, again, who was a contractor and I've been out of work for 3 weeks now, and have filed my claim that is still pending, what can you all do as senators and Congress to work with perhaps, Governor West Moore? What things are available to all to work together to help residents and constituents and taxpayers to cope with this?
So thank you. So first of all, I want to thank you for everything that you have done for our country. And I want you to know we're working as a team to make sure that we are responding. This is a moment of crisis. It really is. It's a moment of extreme crisis. And We're working as a team. And so we've described tonight the things that we're doing in the Senate and in the House, making sure that we're fighting back, that we're out and about with people, but we're also working with people like the governor. We're going to be working with your county executives, and council members are here tonight as well to make sure that the resources that are needed as people, you know, and I, again, even the person here who said she lost her job, we recognize this is extremely distressing. But this is so destabilizing, and it is something that is just, I mean, for all of us, it's horrible. So in the meanwhile, there are programs that are on our websites, the resources that are available. I know the governor has also compiled a list of resources that I think you can get through their website as well, because we know that this is going to, first of all, it's going to take a long time, I think. And the impact of it is unknown at this point. I think this is going to have a tremendous impact on our economy. It's going to have a tremendous impact on our families. Everything from financially to emotionally and psychologically. This is a real injury for all of us. It's a serious injury, but we are going to continue working as a team to make sure that we are responding to the need. We know this is going to create a lot of need. Everything from housing, people are going to have to figure out how to pay for their rent, for their mortgages. People are going to have to figure out how to buy groceries and pay for child care and the other things that are needed. And we are not blind to any of that. So there are resources that we posted. We're going to continue to keep to be vigilant, making sure that we're working together to provide for everyone.
I think we can do one more question, and our senators have to leave. Congressman Raskin can stay. So I'm gonna get Krista to do one more question here.
Hi there, I'm a 22-year federal employee, also with the National Archives. Many of us become federal employees because we want to help. And to a person, my colleagues and I are saying, we lose our job. We can't help people anymore. That's just so sad. But I'm texting with my colleagues now who are across the country, and they are in Republican districts, and they said, please ask, what are the words we have to say to our Republican representatives to get them to listen to us, to get them to understand what's going to happen to their district, to their state, and what can we do? What are the magic words? Please tell us the magic words.
So they should tell them to vote them out of office next year. They should vote on certifications. Is when those midterms come up, they should be telling them they can't count on their vote anymore, that they will be voted out of. That's the language that you listen to. I think that's the language that will also encourage them to stand up to Donald Trump, is to let them know that they do not appreciate their silence, the cowardice, that they need to stand up immediately and need to start voting against these nominees, these unqualified nominees who have taken this vow of loyalty to this man. I mean, these people have forgotten their whole mind. I sat in front of a woman today, the Secretary of Labor, who has a record when she was in Congress, voting for the PRO Act, for example. She got there today and said, I will do what Donald Trump says for me to do. That's literally what her testimony was. Yeah, I did vote for it, but you know what? Now's a different day. I'm going to do what Donald Trump says to do. So these Republicans, tell them to tell their representatives they're going to vote them out of office if they can't change terms. If they're going to and again, it's not just the Democrats. This, you know, like I said, I keep hearing people say, well, what are the Democrats going to do? The people who are in this moment to be are complicit are the Republicans. These are people who, you know, have been, have you heard anything from them? They fall right in line, and they have to also begin to be accountable for what is happening now. And I think that they need to be saying, so in these red states, again, people are losing all over our country. When it's all told, this hurts everyone. Everyone. And again, these people could care less. They never did care about them and do not care about them now, and they have to begin to speak up as well.
I get it from Angela. They should call their congressperson and tell them they're going to vote their posterior out of office. And they should demand that these Republican members and senators do town hall meetings to find out what they think about it. Because they're not having them. So all of your family friends who live in red districts and red states, you call and activate them tonight and say, be demanding town hall meetings. And, yeah. They also, some of us are gonna have to go into their districts to have the town hall meetings for them.
I could just add to that because, some of our Republicans in the Senate, and I'm sure this is true of the House, they are slowly beginning to feel it because when you have folks from the Department of Agriculture laid off, when you have FAA workers laid off, when you have people who do sort of nuclear security administration laid off, they're not just people who live in Maryland and Virginia and Washington, D.C. They are people who live all over the country. And these are people who are not partisan. They're not Democrats or Republicans or independents. As you say, they do their job every day for the American people because they believe in what they do in public service. So they need to go to their members of Congress, their Republican members of Congress, and tell them that regardless of party, they are serving the American people. And it's really important that they understand what negative impact it's having, not just to them personally, but as you said, on things that they're doing for the country. And I do think that this is beginning to happen. I began to hear statements from, again, way too quiet from Republican members, but this is just out of control and they are beginning to feel it. So everybody, please, yes, everyone needs to be calling their members, showing up, demanding in person, town halls, whatever it is for accountability. And I believe this is why the movement will work. I remind people, and I know my colleagues do, a number of years back, the Affordable Care Act, there was an effort, as you know, to repeal it. And that effort passed the House of Representatives. It got to the Senate. Donald Trump was in the White House. He would have signed it. And it was this huge uproar from across the country. People of all parties who had kids with disabilities or family members would be impacted, who was up. And that was that dramatic moment in the Senate when John McCain and a few other Republicans voted no. We need to accelerate that process to save our country.
Another is how ridiculous people are. You may have heard that the administration fired, for example, some nuclear scientists, and then are so ridiculous. They said, "Oops, we didn't mean to fire them," and they can't find them. They want to rehire them and couldn't even find them. The bird flu is spreading across our country, and they fired the people who are the scientists and the medical researchers who can help us with this. And now they're searching about how to rehire these people. So these people don't have any idea what they're doing.
But they can't find them. They deleted their emails. They deleted their emails, so they don't have to get them.
So ridiculous.
All right, I have the staff looking at me, and I work for the officials, so I know what that means. So I want us to give a big round of applause to Senator Chris Van Hollen, Senator Angela Alsobrooks. Please stay in your seat and don't rush up here. This is not over. They each have to leave. Congressman Raskin will be staying so we can continue the questions. But thank you very much. All right, who's Arthur is next?
I'm saying, well, thanks for having me join us. I live in Howard County, so I'm done with the policy. And Congressman Grant, we have met several times, because every time the union president for the Department of Energy, Chapter 228, each time we have something, you are there speaking, and you come down. So one of the questions that I had, and I'm going to piggyback on, because you got to answer the question. What do I tell my members? It was interesting because we had a meeting and the probationary employees who are new, and we have some who are new to the federal government. I was like, well, you're not on probation, you are on probationary period. And then they got laid off. So they're still emailing us and they ask you, what is, I know what the union is doing, what I'm doing, but what can I tell them to make them feel comfortable? That's what, like I said, you asked the questions. What What can I tell them to make them feel at ease that everything's gonna be okay?
It's great to see you. And you're at NTEU, right? Yes, well, NTEU has brought the main case on the CFPB to vindicate the rights of the workers, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and to protect the money and the integrity of the CFPB, which was created by the United States Congress, not by Elon Musk. They don't have the right to deploy a federal agency that was created by us. That's Article 1 of the Constitution. We are the lawmaking power. And the president's core job is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, not violated and not trampled. So the probationary status employee, which exists in the civil service, some people think they don't have any rights. That's not true. They have a right not to be fired for political reasons, which is the heart of the civil service, right? The merit principle, you can be dismissed or disciplined or adversely affected because of professional misconduct. If you steal money from the government, like Elon Musk or Donald Trump does, or you are given poor performance ratings. But you know, the people I'm meeting today out there come up and tell me, they say, you know, Jamie, I just got sacked and I'm a probationary employee. I said, how are your performance ratings? They're like superior, 1%, you know, and those are the people being fired. So that's the basis of that lawsuit. You know, look, sometimes it seems like there's elections all the time in America. In the old days in Montgomery County, it seems there's an election every other day. This election in 2026 cannot come soon enough. It seems far away, but really that is going to be the political answer to your question. In the meantime, we've got to depend on the courts, and we got to depend on these judges. And thank God President Biden appointed more federal judges than any other president did in American history. Not alas at the Supreme Court level, where that court has been stacked and packed and gerrymandered to overthrow women's right to choose. And let's not forget our sisters who live in half of America where they don't have abortion rights tonight, okay? But that court stuck around to render that dreadful presidential immunity decision, saying the president of the United States has the right to commit felony crimes under the auspices of his office and can't be prosecuted for it. I wonder who Thomas and Alito had in mind when they wrote that decision, right? I wonder. So tell your friend, hang tough. Just, you know, like our friend back there who's asking, what can you do? We're all in the same boat here. But like, you know, I went back and I read what a lot of people were saying during the rise of fascism, you know, with Mussolini and with Hitler and with Franco. And what they are saying is the single most important thing is build the social bonds and ties to keep people together, because you don't know on any particular day tactically what you're going to need to do, whether it's go rally in Washington or Annapolis or go to court or go get people registered to vote. You don't know, but you do know that it will depend on the relationships that we have to make sure that we're going to win. And that's what we can do.
Great. I'm going to go to Tamon next, and we're asking people, please stay seated. If you need to stand up and stretch, you can go to the back, but we're not going to form lines in the aisle to be called on.
Also, forgive me, but I've got another town hall to go to, I think, for one of my colleagues. So somebody, I don't know if Kathleen is still in the room, or somebody.
She's here. She's texted me.
All right, just make sure I don't filibuster like the senators do, and go to one. Make sure I get. Yes. Yes.
You keep mentioning the importance of the midterm elections. 2026 is a long way away, and the Republicans are also already pushing things like the SAVE Act with the intent of disenfranchising as many Americans as they can with the stroke of a pen. What are you and your colleagues doing in the meantime to preserve voting rights between now and 2026?
Well, thank you. We are, we are blowing the whistle on that legislation whenever we can on the House floor and committee. It's not just the disenfranchisement of millions of Americans, but specifically millions of American women, because one of the things that they want to be able to test people with when they get to the polling place in the ballot box is whether their existing name, their current name, matches their name of birth. right? Some of that is targeted at the transgender, but it's also targeted at women because so many women change their name. Then some men change their name too, but overwhelmingly it's women who change their name. That's going to catch a lot of people up in another Republican disenfranchisement and voter suppression tactic. So we got to blow the whistle on that. And you know, on the House side, it started 220 to 215 after this election, an historically narrow margin. It's down to 217 to 215 with the departure of Matt Gaetz, who they call Matt Gaetz, not me, but they did, and Elise Stefanik and Mike Walt. So we're down at 270, 215. So all we need to do is pull over a single Republican, and there are a dozen of them who live in Biden-Harris districts. And so that means the meetings like this and town hall meetings around the country have got to take place, especially in those swing districts, to put pressure on those people not to fool around with federalizing the voter suppression tactics that the Republicans have made famous in so many of the red states.
Great. Krista?
Hi, Representative Raskin. I just want to thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and of course your colleagues in the Senate. I don't have a question except to say that I continue to send messages to your office to say thank you. I hope that helps.
Well, thank you for saying thank you. It helps big time. You know, my poor interns are used to, you know, every time I go on Fox or even MSNBC or whatever, and then they put it out in Elon Musk's hate-filled media ecosystem, they all call in to just disturb us and derange us. And so, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to tell you about what that media ecosystem is like and the racist and anti-Semitic filth that we have to deal with all the time, and a lot of my interns do. So to have somebody call up and say, thanks for what you guys are doing, it's a bright spot in our day. Thank you for.
I couldn't be more.
We're winding our time down, guys, so we're going to try to get to as many questions as possible. Please keep your remarks to a question.
That statement was pretty nice.
Except those sort of statements.
So, my name is Stephanie Angela Priest. I would love to echo the question about factors of the previous report by your CAD. Have been working on a lot of infectious diseases and things that don't care about the timing and the struggles that are happening in Congress, one of which I want to bring attention to is avian flu. It is pressing. It doesn't care about partisanship. It doesn't care about infighting. It doesn't care about struggles. They do not. And today we've already released that rats for the first time are getting high kind of avian influenza. We're at 70 humans in the United States who have contracted the virus, and it is spreading, it is mutating, and the seasonal flu right now is at an all-time high. It has never been this high since the height of the swine flu epidemic in 2009. Hospitals are getting overwhelmed, and as of today, my colleagues, I mean, this was part of my portfolio, so I can talk for ages about it, but I can talk about specifically right now. My colleagues report that the Wild to Mild initiative that we had at CDC that ensured that vaccinated America for the annual flu, and we campaigned to ensure that America's vaccinated is shut down. The website is shut down now. The CDC flu staff, for the most part, has been gutted. We have reports of the USDA staff that were sort of have been kicked out, and perhaps they're trying to kick them back in. So I ask right now that we're in a crisis that doesn't care about these political issues, a virus that doesn't care about these political issues, and we have someone at the head of HHS who is anti-vaccine. How are we going to protect our states? How are we going to protect our hospitals, our children, ourselves? We cannot afford to ignore this crisis, and America has to know what to do next and how to operate, whether it's at the local, state, national, international, because as you guys must know, this is spreading around the world. Birds, the wild bird flyways do not care about borders. They're traveling everywhere. So I would love to know what we're going to do. How can we address this?
Well, first, when we get back in office, you are my choice to be our next Secretary of Health and Human Services. That's the attitude and the knowledge and intelligence we need. That's what a real HHS secretary sounds like. I'm afraid RFK Jr. is not going to take care of that problem for you. Look, it is an emergency in our state, and we've been through a pandemic with Donald Trump, where he was spreading propaganda and disinformation and telling everybody to inject themselves with bleach and all of his nonsense quack remedies. But we got through it because we're in a state that takes public health seriously. And we're going to do the same with Governor Wes Moore and with County Executive Mark Elrich and is it Stuart Pittman? No, who's the Howard County? Calvin Hall, of course, mixed up Anne Arundel and Howard. But we're going to get through with it. We're going to get through it again through planning and through that reviled word, science. We're going to use science in order to fight back against the avian flu and all of the viruses coming our way under the leadership of RFK Jr. And Donald Trump. But I will say this, we've got great foundations in Maryland. We've got some great foundations in Baltimore. George Soros, if you're out there, if the big foundations are out there, we need an emergency, massive investment in public health care, in vaccinations to pick up the slack where our government has been hijacked by these lunatics.
Yes, thank you very much, Congressman Raskin, being here and for being one of our biggest champions. I'm a person with a disability, and my husband is in the back of me, and we get services from an agency here in Montgomery County. Macomb, I don't know if you know them.
Yes, indeed.
But anyway, I wanted to ask you, how are you going to protect Medicaid from Donald Trump and from his friends?
Yeah. Thank you for an awesome question. I mean, that is going to be the struggle of March. When we get into March, we have tremendous leverage. This time, the MAGA right, Donald Trump, the gang, they want to keep the government open. They want to keep the government open to pass the most massive tax break in American history for the richest corporations and the richest people. And then they want to keep the government open so they can shut the government down, department by department. Okay. Now, they've been, there's very little legislation that's coming through. They've been doing all of this stuff by unilateral executive action, unlawfully, illegally. But when there have been a few things that they've passed, it's been without Democratic votes. They don't consult us. They don't come compromise with us. They vote when they think they've got the votes together. They've got this narrow majority in the House. They've got a relatively narrow majority in the Senate. And of course, they control the presidency. And then there's sycophants on the Supreme Court. So our position budget is you've got the votes, do it without us. But of course, 30 or 40 right-wing Republicans in the House have never voted to lift the debt ceiling. And they won't. They made that a matter of absolute faith and conviction. They would never vote to increase the debt ceiling. Well, Donald Trump wants to increase the debt ceiling by $4.1 trillion, not to increase Medicaid, not to invest in infrastructure, not to invest in public health, but to give it away to people who are in Elon Musk's social circle and are hanging around Mar-a-Lago, where all of their policies are cooked up. So where are they coming? They're coming to Medicaid. They're saying they're not coming to Medicare, but they're not even pretending they're not coming to Medicaid. And our answer is hell no. You're not going to touch a single penny in Medicaid. Hell no. And so far I've heard nothing but categorical, ferocious opposition from every Democrat I've talked to on the House side and on the Senate side, that it's a non-starter for us. So when we go through this process with them, Can't touch Medicare. They can't touch Medicaid. They can't touch the Affordable Care Act. They can't touch Social Security. How about the $900 billion in the Pentagon to fight wars that they want to fight on the side of Vladimir Putin with now? How about that? How about looking for some cuts over there? But we're not going to support this massive tax cut. They're talking about we will vote to keep the government open as long as they respect the Constitution and the money that's appropriated by Congress is spent for the purposes Congress appropriates it for. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I am Barbara Salkin.
Barbara,
I
I'm not a replay. You couldn't go there. I stuck on the hill.
was successful.
Leisure World, on the case, on the case. Well,
As you said, the valley of day keeps the fascists away. What I want to ask of you, and certainly you work very hard, and I know that, there is something that we need. You are in a position to be a spark plug for us, to give us a heads up where you think there's a congressional race we could win in 2026. That's why I was anxious to speak tonight, because that is paramount. Never mind Maryland. There's Virginia, which has a 2025 gubernatorial election, and there's Virginia that has a 2026. There's Pennsylvania. There's Michigan. There are states, sort of around us. We need clues. Thank you.
there we go. Barbara Salkin from Leisure World Democratic Plus. As you know, I've been raising a ton of money, but it's not for pollsters in the 8th district or TV in the 8th district. I don't think I've ever bothered you guys with the TV or radio or any of that. I do it all through bumper stickers, and I hope you guys will all take one. If I do bumper stickers, I don't have to spend money on posters and TV. So, but look, the money I'm raising, and we've raised millions, goes into the swing districts you're talking about, and it goes into what my campaign really is: democracy summer for the high school kids, the college kids, the apprenticeship kids. It goes into investing in a new generation of Democratic organizers and leaders, which is what we need. And don't kid yourself, because the right wing and the Republicans are targeting the young people, especially young white men. And we need to be out there organizing the new generation to become Democrats for freedom in America, and not MAGA right lunatics like Elon Musk and Donald Trump. So will I be telling you that? Absolutely. We're going to be organizing. We've got our Democracy Summer Leadership Pack, which puts out stuff about all of the races. My campaign does that. Democracy Summer does it. And we also create joint fundraising agreements with Democrats running in those swing districts around the country. But I hope all of you are on my list. If not, I'll give you my card. You send me a note. I'll put you on my list, and you will never be lonely again. That's my promise. Right on, Democrats. Hang tough, everybody. Thank you for everything you're doing.
My name is Nikhil Brown. I am the proud chair of the Howard County Democratic Central Committee. I'm going to keep you, who all really are my heroes. Federal workers, federal contractors, thank you for what you do. Please, please keep the faith. Know that we're here for you. Know that we're fighting for you, and know that we're not. Thank you so much. Please drive safe.
Also, we have a resource table, and it has all the information that you heard the congressman and the senators. So please pick one way, and please keep looking at page and our social media, MCDC